Welcome to this video. We're going to have a look at HTTP post and get, in particular in relation to the way that PHP works with these core HTTP features. So I'm going to show you is obviously as specific to PHP in terms of the PHP code I'm going to show you, but these are they're working with HTTP request methods. So you'll see these in other server-side languages if you investigate those. And primarily, you'll see there's lots of different, what's known as HTTP verbs here, but the two that we're interested in are post and get. So these are the headline ones for web development. Get is the one that is used in the vast majority of calls. So this particular page I'll be looking at here, if I right click and inspect. In Chrome, and went to network traffic, and just refreshed the page. All these different bits and pieces, resources that make up this page, they're all, if I click on them, well, you can see there actually, you can see that they're all being called with gets. Let's just show another one there. So this one here, the HTTP headers are indicating that this is a request method of get. Okay, so get just goes and gets a resource off the server, be it HTML, CSS, images, JavaScript in this case. It goes and gets those resources. The other headline one that we're going to look at is post. And post is a way that you can send information to the server along with the HTTP request. But you'll also see that you can do that through get as well through something called a query string. Okay, so let's get into this. So we have over here a little HTML form. It's a little bit nicer for you. So we have a fairly standard HTML form, which consists of a HTML tag with, I have HTML form there, and there's various HTML elements like inputs, lots of different inputs, and a text area. Important thing is that they've all got sensible names. So if you looked at HTML forms, you should have been taught to put names in, unique names against all these different form elements. So I've got a first name and surname there, for example. We'll keep an eye on those. So this form has a method of post. We'll look at get in a second. It has a method of post and an action. So this form is going to send this information to form post process, which is the second file here. So let's say that I want to receive the value of first name there. What I could do in form post process is inside of a PHP block, I could echo out $_post and then use first name because that was the name of the name value pair. So once I send this, it should show me the value of Bob. So let me right click and inspect this again. I'll go to the network tab and I'll just refresh so we can see the call there. So there's a CSS file and then there's the PHP file itself, and you can see that this is called with request method of post, and if I scroll down, there is all the posted values. So it's under a section called form data, so it goes with what's known as the HTTP headers. So you can see that we did also send a value for the surname, although we didn't actually use that. We sent all these with just empty strings apart from marketing. That would have been this here. So it's a drop down list, so it did have a default value in. So let's say that we did want to also see the surname value. So what I'm going to do is I'll just put a paragraph tag around this because it will illustrate an issue with the superglobals. So I'll stick a paragraph around there, close it off at this end, so put in speech marks, and then I'll just copy that line underneath, and we'll ask for the surname as well. Okay, right, so you can see that it doesn't like that. Let's just show you that it will cause a error, which looks like this. Okay, so the issue is that if you want to echo out these superglobals, because they are what's known as associate arrays, which we'll see in a second, they do need to be placed inside of curly braces, like so, to get them to be calculated first. Right, so see, Visual Studio Code has thinks it seems to be happy with that now. If I refresh, send the data again, so it gets posted, you can see there's the two values being retrieved. Now, so this thing post is a super global. It's available throughout this page in the global scope, and it's also what's known as an associate array. Let's show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to echo out a pre-tag, and then I'm going to do print underscore r, which we can use to output more complex data types. And let's just shove the whole of post there, not any specific value. And then I'll put a closing echo tag at the end here as well, just to close the pre. Pre just means format it, present it in its basic format. Right, so I'll go refresh, and there's the array. So $_post represents an associate array. What we mean by that is it uses strings as the values for the different slots in the array, rather than it being index, which is a kind of traditional array concept. So in PHP we have an associate array where these strings, first name, surname, email, etc., equate to the different values that were stored in the form. And that, of course, we've already seen is in here, because if we just refresh and we go to the network, and we can look at the headers, and we scroll down, and we can see all those values listed there. So you can see that we've got blanks for a number of those values. Now, because this is an associate array, what we can actually also do is loop around it and extract all the values. So let me just comment these out, and let's show you a quick way to retrieve all the values that we've got in there. So we could say for each, and then we could say $_post, and then we could extract the and we could say as, and then the name, and then the value. Okay, so a for each is going to loop around all the different values in the associate array when it can extract the name and their value. So let's echo them out. So we could say echo, and then we could say let's put this in the paragraph tag. So it's a name, that's the name of the field, and then we can say $value, that's the value of the field, and let's stick a paragraph in at the end. Okay, and let's take a look at that. We can see that there we've got all the fields and the values if there were values present. Let's go back, let's fill out some more of these fields. So Bob is bus.com, that'll do. There's his number, there's that number, and some message, and yes it does, and there's a friend. We'll send that. So all those values can be retrieved and displayed there. Okay, so that's using post. Now let's have a look at the HTTP GET method. So that's this file here, form GET. So what I've got here is another form exactly the same as the one you've just seen. So let's show you what this looks like through the browser. So there's exactly the same form. The difference this time, the only difference, is that the method is set to get and the action is set to go to this form get process file. Got all the same fields in there. So this data is all going to be sent across to this page here using this method, which is actually the default. So if there was no method value in there, it would send using this get method anyway, but we'll put it in explicitly. Excuse me. Right, so form get process then, we could, let's replicate what we did before. Let's just echo out first of all surname. So we say get this time surname. So this time rather than using post, we use the super global of $_get, and that's going to retrieve the surname from that form submission. So first, surname we've done right. So let's put Smith in there. send that, and again the value appears there. And so we could use all those same tricks that we saw here in terms of extracting the different values, and we could print out the whole thing, and we could loop round them all as well, like that. But if we were going to loop round them, we would use the get this time, because all those values are inside of the get superglobal. So let's try that now. Let's head back, let's fill out some more fields. I'm not going to fill them all out. Okay, you get the idea. And then we'll send those. And you can see we can retrieve all those values and display them. Right, so let's right click and inspect and try and see where that data has come from this time, because we go to network and let's just refresh again. There's the page. And I'll scroll down. Now this time, rather than saying form data, it says query string parameters, and there's all our same values. So these are called query string parameters. So and you may have noticed that they do actually appear here in the URL. So you have this thing here that's known as a query string. So you've got first name equals John, ampersand, surname equals Smith, and these all appear after a question mark in the URL. So the data is sent in that route there. If I go back to the previous example to prove to you that those values weren't there before. So let's just go back to the post one that we had. So form post. So there's that form. Let's bring this fella up as well on network traffic. So I'll just put some values of a bit rubbish in these for now, and then we'll send that one. So there we go. A bit of form validation on there. Right, so off it goes, it receives the data. So the point being that there's nothing in the URL, so the values don't appear in the query string when it's a method post, and where they do appear is down here as form data. Whereas this one, which is using the form method of get, the data is sent as query string parameters, and you can see them there in the URL. Now, because they appear in the URL, that does mean that you could, I've got John there, I could change that to Bob and recall that link, and it will change that value there. So query strings can be a little bit insecure if not handled correctly, and what I'm showing you here is not ideal. You wouldn't use this in a real application, but it's designed just to get you to understand the difference between post and get. Okay, so we get the values go in the query string. With post, they go in the HTTP headers, and they are retrieved by their the appropriate superglobals, these associate arrays, the get and post. Now, what this idea of a query string illustrates, though, is that you don't necessarily need a form. So if you want to send information from one page to another, you don't necessarily have to create a big form with lots of values in it. So I've got a little file here called query string, and you've got a little HTML hyperlink there going to query string process. But what I could do is mimic that same idea of a question mark and put a name and a value inside. So I could say, after the PHP, I could say question mark, and I could say job equals manager. Okay, so if we save that, and then over in, so that's going to link to this query string process file here. So if I wanted to see what that was, I could say echo, and then $_get, and then just have to remember what I called it, which was job. So we say get job. Right, so if we try this now, so I need to go to just open up another little file. So this is local host, and then we've got query string. So there's our link. When I roll over it, it's going to see at the very bottom of the browser window. In some browsers it will show you, so it's saying job equals manager. When I click on that, manager is sent. You can see it appears up there. Maybe I'm not the manager, maybe I'm the boss. Okay, and you can can see that that changes down there. Okay, so and if I want to say more than one value, I could put a ampersand. So I'm just replicating what we saw here when the form was using the get process. You've got ampersand there with surname. So I could repeat this process myself here. I could say ampersand salary equals 20,000. Let's save that. Let's just show you that we have got that as well. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just use that little loop again, so that I can easily just pick these values up, because it's the same concept. Right, so now if we go back here, just refresh, I've got two values being sent, job and salary. There's job, there's salary, and you can see them both being picked up and displayed. Okay, so the values go inside of a query string. Now, say there are issues around the security of this. Just before I get into this, I don't want to frighten you away from using query strings. They are used a lot. Let's give you a nice little example. I go to Google and I type $Q equals cats. It will put cats in for me to run a query. So you see this, Google are using the concept of a query string there to facilitate that. So they are very, very widely used. Where you wouldn't want to use this kind of thing though is if your form was, for example, a login form, because if you have a login form with user credentials like your login and password, you wouldn't want them appearing in the URL. So login forms will generally use post. If you're quite happy for people to see the values appearing in the URL, then feel free to use a get, and gets are bookmarkable as well, which is useful. So let's just have a look what we could do in here in terms of being a little bit more secure about whether we display a value. So that was just a quick way to look at the data. So what I could do is, let's say we could say if if is set $_get manager. That was one of our two values. Then great, we'll set a variable of sorry, it was job, wasn't it? Job. If get job, then we'll say job is equal to that value. Okay, so we can set it, else we can say job equals not set. Right, let's echo that out. So echo job. Right, so let's go back to here and refresh, and it tells us that we are a manager because it's set in there. Now if it wasn't set, so if we didn't have job up there, I'll maybe leave salary in. If I didn't have, it's not set. Okay, so this if else construct is dead handy with gets like this. It's so handy that it can be shortened, so we could use a ternary operator. So we could say job equals is set $get job. So is that set? That's the question we ask. If it is, great. Then we'll assign that value into our new variable. Else, with the colon here, we'll say it's equal to not set. So this is a shorthand route, it's what's known as a ternary operator, to produce the above there. So this is a ternary operator. Okay, it's just a shorthand if else. So let me comment that out. So we're looking out for get job, and we'll set job equal to that if it's there, else we'll set it to not set. So go back to here, refresh, we still get not set. If I go back, pick up the manager, it's still there. Okay, now you can, if you're running PHP 7, you can boil this down even further because there's something called a null coalescing spelled that wrong, operator, and because this concept is used an awful lot to detect a value, so it's been boiled down, it's been refactored for us with PHP 7, so we can just say $get job 2 question marks, which is a shorthand for that. And then if that's the case, we can say not set. So basically this does an is set and set it to the current value for us. So let's get rid of that one, save it, try it, see it's still working fine. If job wasn't set, then we get not set. Okay, so it's a good idea to do this kind of thing, and also later videos we'll look at sanitizing this kind of stuff to make sure it's safe, because you shouldn't really just echo something like that straight back to the user. But let's assume this is going to go further into some other logic. One last thing as regards to this kind of setup, checking variables. If I go to form post process, if I tried a similar kind of trick here, so let's say that let's lift this standard if else so you can see this a little bit better. So I've got, let's say we wanted to check whether we had a value for surname, so I'll put surname in there. Right, and this time we're using post. Right, so if post surname is set, great, set surname to that, else we'll say it's not set, and then we'll echo it. Okay, so what's going to happen here in the post world? So let's find our post example, which is this one, and it was surname that we were interested in. So I'll just refresh this. I'm not going to put a value for surname in, but I will put a value for first name, and then we'll send it. And we don't get any message, so you might have been expecting at that point to see not set. And the problem is that with post, it does actually send a value, but it sends an empty string. So surname was sent, so it is set, but it's empty. It's an empty string. So with post, you have to be a little bit more careful. So we can say if is set and isn't empty. Right, so that's a logical and it isn't empty. Let's try that, refresh. So we get the not set, but if it was set, so surname we were playing around with, Smith in there, and then send it, it picks it up. Okay, so just be aware with forms that whether you've got fields that they can be sent as empty values, and you need to pick them up by checking it is set and also whether it's not empty or not. Let's show you that same logic on our form get process. So I'll just comment those out, put these back in here. Let's change these to gets. Right, and let's just drop this bit from here. So we're not doing the is empty bit on this one at the moment. We're just checking to see if it's set. So we'll go to our form get. Right, and we're not going to set surname, but we will set first name. So it's going to send this as a get. Over it goes, and oops, and you see again, it doesn't display the value because it is set, but it's set as an empty value. So what we will need is to put checking for it's empty in there as well, and then it will pick it up. Okay, but if it was set, because you can actually see up there, it was sent as an empty string. But if it was set, I can hard code it in there. You see it get displayed. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to post and get. So in summary, when you send stuff from a HTML form, which if it has a method of post, then you need to retrieve those values using the underscore, using the superglobal of post, and those values go in the HTTP headers. If you've got a form which has got a method of get, or indeed has got no method, then the data is sent using the query string, and you retrieve it using the get superglobal in PHP. And extending that logic, that means that you can just send values in a query string yourself if you choose, by putting a question mark and then name values associated. So a name and a value, ampersand, and a name and a value, and you can retrieve those with get as well. Okay, thank you.